Hello and welcome to another video by Rick Miracle. Me, reading books, all kinds of books, and making videos. The book on this one, America's Secret Establishment, an introduction to the Order of the Skull and Bones. Antony Sutton, a well-respected author. Like I say in my videos, there are a lot of people smarter than me. I read and report, and I use my brain. I think. Published in 1986. Here is Antony Sutton. So, America's Secret Establishment. George Bush's Skull and Bones. Yale University. This ought to be good. But before I start that, let's just have a little bit of background here. I got another book here. Masonry Beyond the Light. Masonry. Freemasonry and Satanism is this series. Ironically, it says Masonry on the cover, and you can see the Satanism symbol right there. So what's going on? This is by William Schoenerbellen. I'm probably saying his name wrong. To some, it's a fine Christian organization, Masonry. But to higher level Masons who know what goes on behind the scenes, it's something different. Much different. So anyways, while a witch, this guy ought to know on this book. We'll have to do a book of review on this pretty quick. While he was a witch, William Schoenerbellen studied hard to achieve 32 degrees of Masonry, but the higher he climbed, the more ungodliness he discovered. Here are the inside secrets of Masonry. If you think a person can be a good Christian and a good Mason, you need the facts. Another book I need to read, Family of Secrets. The Bush Dynasties, America's Invisible Government, and the Hidden History of the Last 50 Years, Russ Baker. And as we know, another Bush wants to be president here in 2016. Another character, Brzezinski, The Grand Chessboard. This is a popular book. So these people think this revolutionary activity, destroying countries for some kind of ideology, they think it's all a game, these elitists. Meanwhile, their activities cause a lot of people to be murdered under the name of war, and their wealth and resources stolen under the name of war, and promoting democracy. Democracy where people vote for their choice of president or make a decision on how they would like their society. And I would suspect it also means a society that makes decisions that is not mind-controlled and programmed by seriously technical techniques. Lots of research behind that. How to mind control people. And of course, if I were, or anybody else were to try to fight this system, they would call you a radical or an anti-government belligerent, possibly an insurgent, and likely a terrorist if you don't give up your guns whenever they pull that trigger. But for them, they can go ahead and do these things and get away with it. Like Saul Alinsky, one of Hillary's buds, rules for radicals. So they can write books about creating all these radical situations. And the rest of us are supposed to just do what the controlled government tells us. And of course, 911, we got this report about the Twin Towers, which apparently doesn't mention Building 7. They created a nice big thick book when we all know it was an inside job. And if we don't know it, then we need to get this book, 911 Synthetic Terror, Webster, Griffith, Tarpley. As you can see, I read all this. Leaving very little doubt in any intelligent person's mind that there are some people that are responsible for 911. Not some Arabs with box cutters. And they have all kinds of elitist organizations worldwide, trilateralism, the Trilateral Commission, and elite planning for world management. There's a mouthful. You can see I got more books to read. I read this book, how they were sending economic professors and engineers all over the world, John Perkins, I mentioned this book a lot, to convince governments to borrow money, promising them a significant increase in their GNP, gross national product. In other words, promising them they're going to make a lot of money and everything will be much better for their citizens. When there was a plan all along to have those countries default and fall under the control of the United Nations, which is controlled by the, I guess for all practical purposes, the witchcraft Illuminati groups, occultic, Kabbalah, Zionist Jewish folks, and all the other Jesuits and everybody else involved in the conspiracy to bring about a new world order and a new age and destroy Christianity. So these are some of the tools. Sure, you can borrow $1 billion. Another one I need to read. The Invisible Government. So again, a lot smarter people than me. Dan Smoot. There does exist and has existed for a generation an international Anglophily network which operates to some extent in the way the radical right believes the Communist Act. Jim Marrs, the Terror Conspiracy, Deception, 911, and the Loss of Liberty, and all the stuff that's gone over since 911. Jim Marrs, I have to read this book. Get any one of these books, and if you're not enlightened as to what's going on, you will be. Reagan, Trilateralism, and the Neoliberals, Containment and Intervention in the 1980s. Little pamphlet book here. Written when? Let's look at the date. 1986. The Problems of Empire. Andrew Young on the East-West. Competition for Africa. Military bases around the globe. On propaganda. Selected U.S. military and CI interventions. Lovely pieces of real estate. U.S. territorial expansion. The intervention racket. Corporate Camelot, Guatemala. What is going on in our world? Military bases around the globe. Look at this. 1986 pamphlet book. So I've been doing a lot of study. And I don't like to just get on this video program here and tell you what I think. I like to read the books and show what's in the books. Poor little Nicaragua, huh? Look at the weaponries. Reminds me of shock and awe in Iraq. Those people never saw it coming. They had no weapons of mass destruction in Iraq. And those troops were incinerated. That's not war. And of course the Franklin cover-up, child abuse, Satanism, and murder in Nebraska. Senator John DeCamp, I guess he's a smart guy who wrote this book. And of course, Secrets of the Tomb, Skull and Bones, the Ivy League, and the Hidden Paths to Power. Alexander Robbins. Mr. Robbins, in the back of his book, Alex Robbins, a bold new voice and a superb reporter with an eye for a good story, has turned her attention to another fascinating tale. The secret societies at Yale have walls of confidentiality as hard to breach as those of the CIA. And none more so than the Skull and Bones. She managed to break through, and with wit and energy shows us what happens when friendships and power meet. It might seem strange, the series and sequences of books I've gone over, from Zionism to the Philadelphia Experiment to UFO aliens, craft, gray aliens, reptilians, psychic abilities, remote viewing, paranormal, mysticism, the Bible, Jesus, Shiva, the goddess of destruction, the satanic rituals and the football halftime shows, the Grammys, the Olympic openings, and so much more TV programming. But when one thinks about it, everything under the sun is connected. For one thing, it's all under the sun. It's all on planet Earth. And it seems like we can say that all of planet Earth is under the control of some secret power. If you get to the top, is it some interdimensional demonic being? Is it a Lucifer character? Which is interesting enough to even think about, because Lucas Trust, formerly Lucifer Trust, says it all there, publishing, has an office right next to the United Nations. And the United Nations has a meditation room and a lot of occult symbolism. And the Freemasons and other organizations are bent on destroying Christianity, if you've been watching my videos. So is, or are, the all the books and material on UFOs and aliens, I guess, trying to program America to believe there are advanced races out there. Is that all true? Or is that all just a grand hoax? I don't think we can call the historic evidence on ghost strange things happening throughout history. Jesus manifesting bread and fish and prophesizing future events. Edgar Cayce. And so many other prophets. And so many books I've read on famous people who were into the occult, had psychic experiences when they were young. So in other words, in the background, is there some kind of witchcraft that's real? And are these people into it using the head of death symbol? I mean, when you look at a truck and it says Ford on the back, you can assume it's a Ford. So when you see these people with these symbols, so anyways, 1986. Interestingly enough, published in Billings, Montana. Apparently the author states he had trouble finding a publisher. Of course. Little highlight thing here. No one disputes with them the right, this right. So we offer no objections to the existing of the skull and bones. No one disputes with them this right to exist. But we question the plan on which they act. So some really cool topics in this book, if you call them cool. The secret cult of the order. How the order creates war and revolutions. How the order creates war and revolutions. The secret cult of the order. How the order controls education. So I read the first 50 pages of this in the last 2 days and did my usual highlighting. So let's do this little introduction to this book and see if we can come away with a firm opinion of what's behind the secret goings-on in the world. After 16 books and 25 years in basic research, I thought I heard it all. And the world was a confused mess, probably beyond understanding and certainly beyond salvation. And there was little I could do about it. That's the author's preface. And I think that's a lot of people feel that way. And there was little I could do about it. So anyways, he says in his 1968 book, Western Technology and Soviet Economic Development, I detailed how the West had built the Soviet Union. That's important to remember. The West. What is the West? The West would be Europe, England, and the United States. It's all west of the Soviet Union. And the East would be Eastern Europe, Asia, and Russia, Ukraine. That's called the East, the Far East. So the West, fundamentally speaking, probably the same folks, the Yiddish Jews and other Jewish bankster peoples in New York City, along with other people they controlled, including the Masons and all that, were building up Russia. And crazy enough, they built up Hitler's Germany too. Alright, so it says here, Antony Sutton says, I detailed how the West had built up the Soviet Union. However, the work generated a seemingly insolvable puzzle. Why have we done this? Why did we build this Soviet Union while we also transferred technology to Hitler's Germany? Why does Washington want to conceal these facts? Why have we boosted Soviet military power? And I've said this many times, and it's It's got to be true. But in 1917, when the Bolshevik Jewish folks took over Russia, killed the Tsar and his family, and in the next 10 years, up to probably 1927 and beyond, think about that, proceeded to kill off 100 million Christians and other good people and destroy the Christian churches, but not the Jewish temples. So, you're getting close on 1930. And prior to World War II, 10 years later, 1940, 1939. So my point is, with all those banksters, all that financing, all those people killed, to control that size of a continent, does anybody really believe the evil forces just one day packed up and walked out of there? Then after World War II, Russia still was the evil force and had the Iron Wall around a lot of the divided nations in the Europe. And that lasted for quite a few years. So it certainly wasn't a benevolent force that controlled Russia. And then when they took the Berlin Wall down, I suspect there's a grand plan. And I think the books I've got here show that's true. Then a year or so ago, I received an 8-inch batch of documents. Nothing less than the membership list of an American secret society. The names spelled power and capital. Power with a capital P. As I probed each individual, a pattern emerged, and a formerly fuzzy world became crystal clear. These volumes, the book you will read here is a combined version of a series reporting on this research. Each volume builds upon the previous volume in a logical step-by-step process. That's how I kind of designed these videos I made. When you do consider all this UFO activity and the propaganda, flat Earth theory, or the ball hurtling through space at 66,000+ miles an hour, rotating on its axis at 1,000 miles an hour, and with all the space travel that we have done, there's been no picture of Earth. Think about that, a picture of Earth. If you took a picture of Earth, for, let's say from the craft we sent over to Mars or out in deep space, and it just turned around and took a picture of Earth, you would see Earth and you would see a moon. Probably. And also, if you're going away from the sun, you would see a sun behind the Earth. Has anybody ever seen such pictures? So, it calls into question, why? That would be strange. You would think there would be a gigantic amount of pictures of those things. That would be fascinating. The craft is heading off into space. And at one time it turns around when the Earth is between the craft and the sun, and then the moon is on the side of the craft, and you'd see a picture of the moon, the Earth, the sun, maybe another planet. It'd be fascinating. Why not? So my point is, who controls the world? These people. They control the education. They control everything. We know what we know. No, because that's what they put in the educational institutions. And there's two types of institutions. There's one for the elitist, Harvard and Yale, and others, Oxford in Britain, where the elitists wind up being presidents and leaders. Nobody else gets in those positions. And then there are all the other community colleges and universities that are designed for people to be in the workplace. They don't want anybody to be coming up with these philosophical questions and thinking, especially about religion and the socialism and communism and who created it and why. So anyways, in this book, these volumes will explain why the West, us, built the Soviets and Hitler, why we go to war and lose, why Wall Street loves Marxists and Nazis, and why the kids can't read, and why the churches have become propaganda fronts, why historical facts are suppressed, why politicians lie, and 100 other whys. Antony Sutton. Phoenix, Arizona, July 30th, 1983. I guess one of the announcements of a weekly meeting card for the bonesmen at the Skull and Bones. That's the head of death. And we can see that the George Bush's senior's daddy was a member. So moving on with this book. During the past 100 years, any theory of history or historical evidence that falls outside a pattern established by American Historical Association and the major foundations with their grant-making powers has been attacked or rejected. So during the past 100 years, if you try to say something is true that is not mainstream by the elitist-owned publishing companies, newspapers, documentaries, and all that, then you are attacked or rejected. Eastern liberal establishment and its official historical line. So that's all that's working. The Eastern liberal establishment. So this seems to me, this Eastern liberal establishment is being built upon the Helena Blavatsky Theosophist Society, which created the Lucifer Publishing Company, which later changed its name to Lucas Trust, and of the many other New Age books, whether on the Palladians, Ascension, Yoga, Witchcraft, Illuminati rituals, and so many more topics like that that I've discussed in previous videos. It seems that is the new religion for the New World Order. In the meantime, of course, they're trying to destroy Christianity. And if you're in the military, the way I understand it, they changed the manual. If you talk about Jesus, it's a court-martial offense. All right, the official establishment history. By definitions, events can never be the result of a conspiracy. So nothing is a conspiracy. All those pundits and all those presidents who said, I don't really want to go to war, while they're bombing the heck out of another country. And all those pundits, Saddam Hussein has weapons of mass destruction. Everybody said they know it's for sure. In all of the wars, all these people that control our reality have said these things. And later on, we find out they weren't true. World War I, there was supposed to be a ferry crashing in the water off the coast of Britain. And some Americans were supposedly killed between the War of Britain and Germany. Germany had a lot of submarines. So Wilson, who was guided by Jewish advisors predominantly, the banksters, the people who were operating behind the scenes, controlling a lot of New York money supply, corporations, all the mines all over Africa, having their finger in things all over the world, and apparently now probably controlling 90+% of the resources and powers all over the world. Who are these entities? Revelation in the Bible, it says, Jews who call themselves Jews but are not. Who are they? Why would it say that in the Bible when it appears to be true? If you look at the pictures of Jerusalem and Israel now, go look up Aliyah or the jpost.com, and you'll see pictures of gatherings and people getting off the plane. They're recruiting people from all over the world to come back home. Israel's your homeland if you're Jewish. And they all appear to be pretty white. And Jesus was born in Bethlehem. I suspect he wasn't probably that white. He was Hebrew, and so something's a little suspicious there. So back to the book. So by definition, there can never be a conspiracy. And you hear it all the time, conspiracy theories. Now you hear a lot of pundits and alternate website people and a lot of others saying, you know what, those conspiracy theories appear to be true. So many people were far ahead of their time. They were ridiculed, a lot of people killed. They can never result from premeditated, planned group action. So an excellent example is the Kennedy assassination. Within 9 hours of the Dallas tragedy, TV networks announced the shooting was not a conspiracy. How do they know that? And the minds of the people were all traumatized at the time. That's probably part of the mind control technique. While everybody was in a state of shock and disbelief, right on the boob tube you go, it wasn't a conspiracy. Oswald did it by himself. Tim McVeigh did the Oklahoma City bombing by himself. Some Arabs with box cutters conspired in a cave with Bin Laden to do it by themselves. Sandy Hook? No, that wasn't a hoax. Don't pay attention to those videos on YouTube. Or the books printed on the topic. The London train bombing? Don't worry that they were having a train bombing exercise nearby. Don't worry that they were having a planes planning to run into buildings exercise while 9/11 happened. Don't worry about the Boston bombing when they were having an exercise nearby, which happened at 666 Boylston Street, Boston. And they used this exercise to go to door, barging in on homes, demanding it. It was a planned exercise to see how people would behave. I'm going to say this now, and I hate to say it, but this New World Order is about populations, we the people, being obedient to the government, i.e. a slave. And they're going to get their point across. Like in these other Wacos and the Bundy thing and many others, that anybody who resists will likely be shot on sight. You can't argue with these people. I said this to some of my friends. It's concerning. But if there is a nuclear explosion in some major USA harbor, or the dollar crash, or a plague, or whatever causes a national security calamity, and the president has to declare martial law, and the federal governments say, for everyone's safety, your guns have to be turned in, and you have to get on a bus and go to a FEMA camp. Voluntarily go to your doom and death, likely, and slavery. And those who resist, who go to their front door and try to argue with these people, there will not be any argument, in my opinion. Bang. It's enough to make a person cry about what might happen in the future. This is what's happened in other revolutions. This next revolution is not going to be a Russian revolution, a French revolution, a Chinese revolution, a German revolution, Spain revolution, United States American revolution. It's going to be a world revolution, according to my research. So I'll get back to this book. Just to ensure the official line dominates, in 1946, the Rockefeller Foundation allotted $139,000 for the official history of World War II. This to avoid a repeat of debunking history books which embarrassed the establishment after World War I. Remember, World War I, they said a ferry sunk off the coast of Britain, and some Americans were killed. So Woodrow Wilson declared war, and his advisors were all these Jewish banksters and other Jewish folks. Not all Jewish people are in on this. And because Germany, of course, did not want to go to war with America. And then later after that, they found out that the ferry never sank. But by then, it was too late. They were already changing our industrial factories for war weapons and war preparations. It was all planned. It had a purpose. World War II had a purpose. Germany, again, after World War I, certainly did not want to go to war with the United States. But Germany and Japan had an agreement. If somebody attacked one, they would attack the other. So if you attacked Japan, then Germany would be your enemy. So Roosevelt had the goal taunt and do things, preventing steel and other supplies, oil or whatever, going to Japan in its war with China. So it prompted Japan to have to attack Pearl Harbor. And so once that happened, then the United States could go to war with Germany. Again, it was all planned. It was a greater purpose, and I think it's part of all the New World Order. If I had to put a percentage of evidence, I would say it's 95+%, that's what it is. And probably the UFO alien thing is actually probably some kind of entities that have been on planet Earth all along, and even operating behind the scenes, controlling governments in the world for food and resources and other maybe sinister, insane activity. Witchcraft, Illuminati rituals, sacrificing people, drinking blood. I don't know, but it seems very sinister, and I think somebody wants to cover up the true goings-on behind the scenes, and that's what the UFO alien agenda is all about, possibly propaganda. I think the books that are printed, like this book, is a book trying to get the truth out, and then you get a book like Helena Blavatsky's The Secret Doctrine, or the 911 Commissioner's Report, are books to steer us away from the truth. So if I divide it to about 50-50, so a lot of the UFO books were probably written by decent people who were trying to get the truth out, and the government pretended to have a cover-up. And a lot of the UFO books were probably written by insiders. Remember who owns the publishing companies? To promote the idea of the UFO conspiracy to the public. Let's look at that for 1 second. This ought to be interesting. So back in 2001, Dark Object. Whitley Strieber's Hidden Agendas. The world's only government-documented UFO crash. Behind the Flying Saucer Mystery, George Amansky. I'm just saying, who controls the world? And we're going to see in this book I'm going over who controls education, the government, all the institutions in the United States. So this was 1967. Of course, they were having Lost in Space back then, the TV program. Star Trek. So there's this higher purpose, this plan to re-educate we the people. Flying saucers. Frank Scully. Some of these books are worth a little bit. I've been collecting them for years. 1951. Is Something Up There? Dale White. (1969). So when we talk about the Skull and Bones and those organizations since 1880, and here's one that's interesting, the population bomb, published in, can you see, 1968. And this guy here, Paul Ehrlich, on the bottom, the author there, is a depopulation guy, was. I don't know if he's still alive. Population control or race to oblivion. Can you see the fear programming? Back in 1967. UFOs past, present, and future. (1974). So my point is, these people who got out of graduated Harvard or Yale and belonged to the secret Masonic organizations like the Skull and Bones and became secretaries of state, secretaries of commerce, education, Department of the Navy, presidents, senators, legislators. You don't think they know a lot of things that we the people don't know? 1968, Flying Saucers and the Three Men. And a lot of the United States citizens were Christians and believed in God. Here's a New Age book, How to Read the Aura, Practice Psychometry, Telepathy, and Clairvoyance. So meanwhile, they wanted to re-educate, 1978, re-educate we people in America and get away from Christianity and have people believe in this new reality. Flying saucers, the startling evidence of the invasion from outer space. So if you're a book collector and you start gathering this data, 1962, or you're an author like Antony Sutton there, paying attention to the Skull and Bones and other material, Situation Red, the UFO siege encounters. And you want to sway public opinion, get away from Christianity, and the United Nations and the powers that be are all into the occult, witchcraft, bringing forth demons. Look at that collider in CERN in Geneva on the Swiss-France border, with a statue of Shiva out front, the goddess of destruction, and 666 in the logo. And Aleister Crowley was involved in the JPL, Jet Propulsion Laboratory, and the beginnings of NASA. The evilest man alive had something to do with some nasty things he did to children. 1977, Leonard Stringfield. So like I said, some of these authors may have been trying to accumulate data and formulate an opinion. The Invisible Government. I think I looked at this in a different format. By David Wise and Thomas Ross. So there's plenty of evidence out there as to what I'm pointing out in this video. 1962. 1962, they knew there was an invisible government. And another one here, and I have many, many, many more of these, but I'm going to limit this. I think I've made my point. I believe they were trying to program and make Americans and world people believe that this was real. And possibly some aliens from outer space. Meanwhile, back at the ranch down in Washington, D.C., non-stop for 100 years, our government has been saying, we want peace, while they're bombing the smithereens out of other countries, expanding the New World Order, one world government. This one is 1967. Amy Mitchell. So back to this book. So I think they were trying to re-educate we the people. I think there were sinister forces behind the scenes, and I think I have the books to prove it. If I haven't already proven it, in the hundreds of hours of videos I've already published. So just to ensure the official line dominates, in 1946, the Rockefeller Foundation allotted $139,000 for an official history of World War II. This to avoid a repeat of debunking history books which embarrassed the establishment after World War I. The Order of Skull and Bones we are about to investigate had great foresight back in the 1880s to create both the American Historical Association and the American Economic Association back in the 1880s. And remember, in the 1890s, 1900, 1910, 1920, The Rockefeller foundations were taking over the medical institutions and ridiculing holistic type doctors who used herbs and other remedies to cure people, running them out of business, making it actually illegal for them to operate, and forcing the surgery type medicine upon Americans. And then later on, the same foundations and corporate leaders ruling the world own the pharmaceutical companies and have everybody on the planet on prescription medications that, generally speaking, they could probably be getting for almost free right now. So the American Economic Association, most economics were then more historians than analysis, under their terms with their people and their objectives. So they created all these associations, Department of Education, Economic Association, even the 1913, the Federal Reserve, while the congressmen and representatives were on Christmas holiday, for under their terms with their people and their objectives to take over the world with this new sinister religion that appears to be clearly demonic, Luciferian, and satanic. So if you don't want to believe in God, you don't want to believe in the Bible, go right ahead. But pay attention to what they're trying to, if you look at what they're doing, you'll see that you might be wrong, and they are trying to make it illegal to talk about Jesus. Failure of official history. Times have changed. The weaknesses and inconsistencies and plain untruths in official history have surfaced. We've got all the books. I've got the books. The books are at the library. You can buy these books I show you on used book sites on the internet. I think Abe Used Books, you can get a book for $2 or $3 and free shipping. Believe it or not. It's like an incredible deal. I buy books like this for $5 and free shipping. I do like to try to find the books, the first editions, because I do believe the publishing companies who might do new editions, later reprints, that they might go through there and censor what's in the book and take out some of the material. So I'm not a very trustful person on some of these issues when it comes to the establishment. Most believe it has been more or less packaged for mass consumption by a naive or greedy historians. Moving on, the devil theory of history. And I'm only reading my highlighted portion, so please, this book you should be able to get pretty cheap. That the only reasonable explanation for recent history in the United States is that there exists a conspiracy to use political power for ends which are inconsistent with the Constitution. This is known as the official historians as the devil theory of history. I noticed the sun was going down, so I had to switch on a light. So what they're trying to do is inconsistent with the Constitution, and it's known as the devil theory of history. A similar pattern of market actions is not proof of conspiracy. Just because something looks like a duck, walks like a duck, and all the ducks act similar, does not make it a duck or a conspiracy. Under the Sherman Act, a similar pattern of prices, where all the prices are the same, is not proof of a conspiracy. That's what they would have you believe. We don't care what you see. Don't believe it. Believe what we tell you. That's not a duck. It doesn't matter that prices of oil go to $4 and then down to $1.69. There's no conspiracy behind that. Notwithstanding the fact that economically, it's crushing countries. It's destroying countries. It's economic warfare. And when it was at $4, it was sucking all the money out of the peoples and the businesses. They're taking us for this roller coaster ride on purpose. And it doesn't appear to have a good ending. When they execute the martial law and say surrender your guns, there is no argument at the front door. Maybe if you try to hide it and then they come in and find it, they'll just shoot you. If you get on the bus to the FEMA camp, you really think they're going to go ahead and house and feed all the multitudes and then release them? They've never done that in other revolutions throughout the world in history. Even in the Crusades from 1000 to 1300 AD. Everybody was slaughtered. Throughout history, that has been the case. If they didn't do it on this new World War III or World Revolution, it would be the first time they didn't slaughter everybody. After World War II, and I think General Patton objected to this, but I think it was Eisenhower. So we had millions of Germans in German prison camps. And under the Geneva Convention, they're prisoners of war, POWs. You can't kill them. But if you change the name of what they are to disarmed enemy combatants, why? Golly, I think you can kill them, and that's what happened. Horrific. How many American people know that? So the Sherman Act is supposed to make sure that there's fair competition, but we know what all these corporations, which now call themselves entities and are protected by the Supreme Court, don't worry that everything is rigged. That's a conspiracy, so it can't be true. All right, so more of my highlighted portions here. There must be secret meetings of all participants and efforts made to conceal joint actions. Those meetings must jointly agree to take a course of action. The action must be illegal. So those are the scenario for a conspiracy. What has to be proven in any conspiracy explanation of history is that the participants have secret groupings and meet to plan illegal actions. However, there is a group within the Council of Foreign Relations which belongs to a secret society sworn to secrecy and which more or less controls this Council of Foreign Relations. These members are the Order, the Skull and Bones. Their membership in the order can be proven. Their meetings can be proven. Their objectives are plainly unconstitutional, and this order has existed for 150 years in the United States. Over there in Britain, they have it, I think they're called the group. Here there's the order. So over there it's called the group, I think, and over here it's called the order. And these are just two of the many Freemasonic Mystery School of Babylon organizations. Knights of Malta, Knights of Columbus, Bohemian Grove, Bilderbergers, Rosicrucian, many witchcraft covens, Illuminati groups. It's just, the list is endless. I mean, I'd be here an hour trying to even read the list if I had it. And I've got books that have it. Fritz Springmeier's book, Bloodlines of the Illuminati, and even in Rabbi Marvin Antelman's two books, Volume 1, Volume 2, To Eliminate the Opate, takes it back even further to the Frankists and the Sabbatins, and basically a bunch of Jewish folks who turned away from God and turned towards the dark side, some kind of Luciferian religion, thinking if you can't be good to earn your way into heaven, you may as well be bad, and to really get into heaven, you have to be really bad. So you can get your way salvation by being very evil, or by being very good. So they say. You can figure that out with your own mind about that logic. But apparently they've decided they don't like God's heaven. There's no party there. So they would rather go with the devil's heaven, where that one gay guy in the parade had a poster he was carrying. I bet hell is fabulous. So moving on to memorandum number 2. We just finished memorandum number 1. The order, what it is and how it began. Those on the inside know it as the order. Others have known it for more than 150 years as Chapter 322 of a German secret society. More formally, for legal purposes, the order was incorporated as the Russell Trust in 1856. It was also once known as the Brotherhood of Death. So George Bush and his father and all these other politicians that belong to this and run our government and Department of War and everything else were members of the Brotherhood of Death. Those who make light of it and want to make fun of it call it the Skull and Bones, or just plain Bones. The American chapter of the German order was founded in 1833 at Yale University by General William Huntington Russell and Alphonso Taft, who in 1876 became Secretary of War in the Grant administration. Alphonso Taft was the father of William Howard Taft, the only man to be both President and Chief Justice of the United States. Yeah, it was in the news today that Chief Justice, Supreme Court Justice Scalia died in bed, and they found him with a pillow over his head. So the debate is, was it he was 79. I suspect he probably died of normal causes. But I mean, who sleeps with a pillow over the top of their head? Okay, what is the order? Chapter 322 is a secret society whose members are sworn to silence. Known among initiates as outsiders or vandals, its members always deny membership. An interesting point is whether the many members in various administrations or who hold government positions have declared their members in the biographical data supplied to the FBI during background checks. Above all, the order is powerful and unbelievably powerful, almost with frightening clarity. Senior societies are unique to Yale. There are 2 other senior societies at Yale, but none elsewhere. Scroll and Key and Wolf's Head are supposedly competitive societies founded in mid-19th century. So you have the Skull and Bones at Yale. Secret society, threat of death, crazy initiations, and most of these people, a huge percentage out of the politicians in high places in power, Secretary of State, presidents, senators, and all that, come from this particular lodge or others. If you don't know this, there are Freemasonic lodges and big temples in every city and every town and every neighborhood throughout the United States and throughout the world. And they are anti-Christians, and they started this magazine, or they were publishing it. This one's 1927, called The New Age. I guess that pretty much explains everything. And apparently they have a lot of money. Look at the buildings they built. And notice the columns. And one of their creed, I'll find it here in a minute. Their creed, here's another version, 1962. But it specifically says on the back, the entire separation of church and state. This is highest on their list. Remember, this is an occultic, luciferic, satanic organization. And does that mean that Satan in the state is okay? The New Age, gay agenda, homosexuality, transgenderism. That's okay, but Christianity and the 10 Commandments is not okay. So it says here in number 5, the entire separation of church and state, and opposition to every attempt to appropriate public monies, federal, state, or local, directly or indirectly, for the support of sectarian or private institutions. So they only want government institutions. So they were publishing these things. So this is serious business. Just a sidebar to the Skull and Bones at Yale. They have these institutions. Look at the creatures on the bottom here. I've shown these before. Look at the feet down there. And the symbols down there. Is that Egyptian hieroglyphics? The triangle. Liberty, equality, and fraternity. They make it sound good. But trust me, it's not good. Millions and millions of people murdered. Look at the naked girl there. And the Ankh, the cross with the circle on the top. Looks like a snake under that guy's chin. (1949). Another temple. And in the back of this one, the entire separation of church and state and opposition to every attempt to appropriate public monies. They are definitely against Christian church, schools, and any other Christian organizations. And as we know, they don't allow the churches to have any say in politics or what's going on, or they will lose their tax-exempt status. So if somebody doesn't think there's something sinister going on. So my point here is the Skull and Bones is just one institution. But a large part of the people who rule some of the biggest things in our country come from the Skull and Bones, the Brotherhood of Death. An interesting point is whether the many members in various administrations or who hold government positions have declared their members in the biographical data supplied by FBI background checks. Above all, the order is powerful, unbelievably powerful, with almost frightening clarity, as I just said. Senior societies are unique to Yale. There are two other senior societies at Yale. The Scroll and Key and Wolf's Head are supposedly competitive societies formed in the mid-19th century. Moving on to the next page. Anyone in the Eastern liberal establishment who is not a member of the Skull and Bones is almost certainly a member of either the Scroll and Key or the Wolf's Head. So the Eastern liberal establishment is promoting the Helena Blavatsky's sacred doctrine, Aleister Crowley's the rule of law, thou shalt do as they wilt. Do as thy wilt is the whole of the law. So there is no commandments there. They're against that. And the Army manual says you can't talk about Jesus in the military anymore. You can get court-martialed. So it doesn't have to be a genius to figure out what's going on here. And it seems to be a higher level consciousness, something greater than what we all think about, behind the scenes controlling this stuff. And I think whatever they are probably the propaganda cover-up with the UFO aliens and all that. Just my theory. And I do believe they have advanced craft. I do believe people see them. I believe they want people to see them. I think they want the reporting to go on. And there may be a grand hoax coming saying there's an alien invasion. As Reagan even said, that then the whole world would unite together against a common enemy. Do they have a grand plan? How a member is chosen by the order: each year 15 and only 15, never more, never fewer, are selected. In the past 150 years, about 2,500 Yale graduates have been initiated into the order. At any one time, about 500 or 600 are alive and active. The most unlikely potential member of the order is a loner and an individualist. The man who goes his own way in the world. I guess that would be me. So a lot of people want to be conformist. They don't want to be different. They're not, I don't understand it. They don't want to think. They don't want to make tough decisions. They don't want to be responsible for anything. So who is going to be responsible if a huge portion of the population doesn't want to get involved? A man who understands that to get along, you have to go along. A man who will sacrifice himself for the good of the team. A moment's reflection illustrates why this is so. In real life, the thrust of the order is to bring about certain objectives. Honors and financial rewards are guaranteed by the power of the order. So all these people in high places have special connections and special privileges. But the price of these honors and rewards is sacrificed to the common goal. The goal of the order. Some, perhaps many, have not been willing to pay this price. And apparently that's what happened to Kennedy. Obviously, part of the elitist in the world. And apparently he decided to come clean and fight these people on numerous issues. And apparently, according to some recent documentaries I've seen, there seems little doubt that they killed him. Crazy. George Bush Sr. was in the CIA at that time. Some strange goings on. Look up George Bush Sr. and Kennedy on maybe 2015, 2016 videos. And they're just, it's pretty plain. It's like 9/11 or the Oklahoma City bombing. A lot of those details have come out. I recently put some of that material in some recent videos. Okay, they think the outside world are known as Gentiles and Vandals. So they think we are Gentiles and Vandals. H.G. Wells says we're beasts and animals not to be trusted. The Jewish folks in the Talmud think we are Gentiles, cattle, and the best of the, call us Goyim, and the best of the Goyim shall be killed. In the Freemasonic literature, they call us the profane. The uninitiated. Moving on, it's instructive to compare 1833 to 1983, and how over the century and half span, a group of 20 to 30 families have emerged to dominate the order. And remember, we can focus on this one order, but we have to realize there are thousands of these different kinds of mystery school of Babylon creations, whether they be Knights of Columbus or Rosicrucian, York Rite Freemasons, Scottish Rite Freemasons, Bilderbergers, Club of Rome, so many names. Hollywood people, the banksters, and some of them have names that probably don't sound bad. They usually use names that sound good. And anyways, a bunch of people who were on the list. I didn't highlight them all, but these people are all on the list. If you want to pause it and read them. But I did highlight some on the bottom. During the 150-year interval since 1833, active membership has evolved into a core group of perhaps 20 or 30 families. It seems their active members have enough influence to push their sons and relatives into the order, and there is significant intermarriage among the families. First, we find old-line American families who arrived on the East Coast in the 1600s. Whitney, Lord, Phelps, Wadsworth, Allen, Bundy, Adams, and so on. Second, we find families who acquired wealth in the last 100 years, sent their sons to Yale, and in time became old-line families, Harriman, Rockefeller, Payne, and Davison. Again, reading my highlighted portions only. Go get the book if you find this an interesting study. The line of descent for the Lord family is full of DeForest and Lockwood names because intermarriage is more than common among these elite families. In the next 100 years, 5 more lords were initiated into the order. Franklin Lord, William Lord, Oswell Lord, Charles Lord II, Winston Lord. This is from 1898 to 1959. When we ask the question, what have these members achieved and what are they doing today, a dramatic picture emerges, as demonstrated in the chart. So they have a little chart here showing these people of the Lord family. So 20 or 30 elite families dominate the Skull and Bones at Yale. And their kids succeed them, and that's why you notice a lot of these senators and presidents and all that just re-pops up with the same last name. Boom, boom, boom. Got a little chart here. All right, memorandum number 3. The Yale College newspapers, Courant and Record, had a blackout policy on the order, as Iconoclast puts it. So the Yale College newspaper were forbidden to make any articles discuss the order at the university. But there was an upstart, smaller paper that bucked the system. As the Iconoclast puts it, we speak through a new publication because the college press is closed to those who dare to openly mention bones. The order was Thomas Cochrane's 1994, who went on to make a career as an influential partner in the influential banking firm J.P. Morgan. First, there is a Yale secret society open only to a select few. For more than 40 years, a secret society called Skull and Bones has existed at Yale College. It receives a certain number of men from each class. These are chosen nominally by the members of the class. All right, so this paper, I guess this guy wrote a little story here. I'll just read my highlighted portions. We represent no clique or clan, but honest men and true. So this was that newspaper who was opposed to the order and trying to expose the goings-on. We represent no clique or clan, but honest men and true, who never will submit to that which 15 men may do. So these people not in the order said they will never submit to that which the 15 men will do. We represent the neutral man, whose voices must be heard, and never can be silenced by a hearty look or word. Of those who influence here at Yale would be but void and null, did they not wear upon their breast 2 crossed bones and a skull. We hold no grudge 'gainst any man, but wish that all may be united by a common bond of peace and harmony. Yet, when a few do to themselves most proudly arrogate the running of affairs, there can be no such happy state. What right, forsooth, have 15 men to lord it over all? If they have grounds on which they base their claim as just and true, we challenge them to set forth exposed to public view, that all may know the reasons why this oligarchy proud elect themselves as Lord Supreme over us, the vulgar crowd. It is for principles of right that we with them contend, for principles which they have ignored, for which we here defend. Shall none assert the right to act as to each seemeth best, but cringe and fawn to him who wears the death's head on his breast. Nay, let all rise and break the spell, whose sickly glamour falls all about all that originates within those brown stone walls. but then the watchword of our ranks, down, down, with skull and bones. I didn't read it all. You can pause it and read it if you really want to read it. But you can get the book, probably at the library. Moving on. Out of every class, Skull and Bones takes its men. They have gone out into the world and have become, in many instances, leaders in society. Finally, the Iconoclast, that newspaper, calls the order a deadly evil, growing year by year. A deadly evil. You think? Look what's going on in the world now, this New World Order. The government buying 450 billion or million, keep getting that number wrong, hollow point bullets, FEMA camps, plagues being created in black op laboratories, all kinds of false flag events meant to sway public opinion, San Bernardino shootings and bombings and terrorist situations. And, of course, the conspiracies and all kinds of other distractions economically, black against white, straights against gay, men against women, evil immigrants, evil Muslims, Arabs, Assad, Syria. We're not getting any truth or leadership out of our leaders. I think that's plain. We're getting insanity. And many of these leaders come from the Skull and Bones, the Brotherhood of Death. So what else would we expect to get? And secret societies of Freemasons, which are apparently into Satanism. Hence the name of this series, Freemasonry and Satanism. Book review number 83, part 1. So finally, the Iconoclast calls the order a deadly evil, growing year by year. Year by year, the deadly evil is growing. The society was never as obnoxious to the college as it is today. When was this book published? 1986. Man, if Antony Sutton is alive today, he's probably flipping his wig. Saying, man, everything I wrote about is coming true. Never before has it shown such arrogance and self-fancied superiority. And we know that about George Bush Jr. If you're not with us, you're against us. And everybody knows that Saddam has weapons of mass destruction. On the other, a society guilty of serious and far-reaching crimes. It is Yale College against Skull and Bones. So a society guilty of serious and far-reaching crimes. We ask all men, as a question of right, which should be allowed to live. So we know that they want to depopulate the planet. They're saying there's 6 or 7 billion people. Personally, I disagree. They lie about everything else. Tell me where I'm wrong. And maybe there's 1 billion, 200 million, and 20 million. So about 1.25 billion. But they don't need all the people now that they have all the technologies. They have programs like sustainability, biodiversity, Agenda 21, Agenda 2030, Patriot Act, and the Common Core, and many other things that they're planning on taking away citizens' rights to ownership of anything, force people into the cities under the guise of sustainability, global warming, global cooling, climate change. Tell me where I'm wrong. Moving on this book. But strange to say, the former has been suspended until the end of the term and obliged to leave town. So if you do not pass your test, and you're not a Skull and Bones man, you're told to leave town and you're suspended. And you're not permitted to pass another examination until next year. But if you're a bonesman, on the contrary, is allowed to remain in New Haven, Connecticut, attend the recitation daily, is called upon to recite, and will have a second examination in less than 6 weeks. So the college has special privileges for the Skull and Bones. If you fail a test, one can be allowed to retest the Skull and Bones, and a non-Skull and Bones member will not be allowed. So Mr. So-and-so is a special case, said a professor, a bonesman. The specialty, we presume, being the fact that Mr. So-and-so wears a death's head and crossbones on his bosom. So this created newspaper was exposing some of these details at the Yale College. So Esquire, September 1977. Moving on here. The article is The Last Secrets of Skull and Bones by Ron Rosenbaum, Esquire, September 1977. Rosenbaum is a Yale graduate attracted by the fictional possibilities of a secret society out to control the world. He is apparently not aware of the political implications. Just reading some of my highlighted portion. The people who have shaped America's national character since it ceased being an undergraduate power had their undergraduate character shaped in that crypt over there, the temple on Yale campus. So I guess after World War I, where we became a national power, our country was taken over by these Skull and Bones men, and I'm sure amongst others. Another comment, when a new member is initiated into the order, tonight he will die to the world and be born into the order, as he will therefore refer to it. The order is a word unto itself, in which he will have a new name and 14 new blood brothers, along with new names. When Rosenbaum starts to inquire about the order, he is told they don't like people tampering or prying. The power of Bones is incredible. They've got their hands on every lever of power in the country. You'll see. It's like trying to look into the mafia. Remember, they're a secret society too. All right, a little more on that memorandum. The core of the research for this book is the addresses books. With those, we can reconstruct a picture of motives, objectives, and operations. The actions of individual members are already recorded in open history and archives. But determining when members enter a scene, what they did, what they argued, who they appointed, when they faded out, we can assemble patterns and deduce objectives. So apparently, with the Order of the Skull and Bones, the membership roster is not published. But they do send the members a catalog periodically, naming all the members that are alive, and a catalog with all the members that have died, with the names and addresses so they can keep in communication. And apparently one of the members died, and his daughter acquired the catalog and contacted Antony Sutton and let him have it to review. And when he saw the correlation of who the members were and who were powerful players in world history, he began to see a picture of what was really going on. So like I just said, you look at the book of the addresses and the names. With these, we can reconstruct a picture of motives, objectives, operations. The actions of individual members are already recorded in open history and archives. So once you know who they are, and we all know the public officials and all the activities, by determining when members enter a scene, what they did, what they argued, who they appointed, and when they faded out, we can assemble patterns to deduce objectives. So after the fact, if you kind of understand the game, you can put the puzzle together. All right, memorandum number 4. Who is in the secret society? So the membership list of about 2,500 initiates into the order was of very obvious features. Let's see, most members are from the eastern seaboard United States. As late as 1950, only 3 members resided in Los Angeles, California, but 28 members resided in New Haven, Connecticut. Members are all males and almost all WASP, white Anglo-Saxon Protestants. These Puritan families either intermarried with financial power or invited the sons of money Mongols, e.g. Rockefeller, Davis, and Harrimans, whose sons became members of the order. It says here, only my highlighted portions I'm reading and then having a conversation about it. There exists in the United States today, and has existed since 1833, a secret society comprising members of old-line American families and representatives of financial power. 2 key families, the Whitneys and Harrimans. 3 Whitneys, William Collins Whitney. His 2 sons are at the core of the Whitney influence in the order, which survives today through the Harriman family and intermarriage with Paynes and Vanderbilts. They have a little chart here. Stimpson family, Perkins family, Whitney family, Phelps family, Bundy family, Lord family, Rockefeller family, Harriman, Wiedenhauser, Sloan, Pillsbury, Davison, Payne, Gilman, Wadsworth, Taft. You can pause it and look at it. Alright, so we got a little more here. William Collins Whitney, 1841 to 1904, is a fine example of how members of the order rise to fame and fortune. W.C. Whitney was initiated in 1863, and by 1872 had only advanced his career to inspector of schools for New York. So a lot of them were in the Department of Education, economics, things like that. These families, they control our world. And considering what has happened in our world since then, one would probably believe correctly that we should stop having these people, the Brotherhood of Death, control our institutions. You think? Most people, citizens like me and everybody else, we just want a normal reality. We don't need these people who control the Federal Reserve, the financial situation, stock markets, to take things up and down and crashing everything and causing wars and all kinds of other propaganda with mind control. It is really stressing out the people of the world. I think that's part of the plan. So he rolled up his massive fortune, became a power behind the throne in the Cleveland administration, and directed the often unscrupulous activities of a cluster of capitalists known as the Whitney Group. This is a list of Whitney's estates at the turn of the century. A city residence in New York, a Venetian palace, 500 acres in Wheatley Hills, Jamaica, Long Island, Sheepshead Bay House with a private track covering 300 acres, a mansion in Berkshire Hills, Massachusetts, with 700 acres of land, October Mountain House with a large tract of land, Stony Ford Farm, New York, used as an auxiliary to his Kentucky stock farm, an Androdeck game preserve of 16,000 acres, a lodge at Blue Mountain Lake with a fine golf course, a bluegrass farm with 3,000 acres in Kentucky, an estate of Aiken, South Carolina, comprising a mansion, race course, and 2,000 acres of hunting land. So make no doubt about it. When they bring about this New World Order, these elites will live like this. And with this sustainability and all these issues they're saying now, and that the money that the U.S. government owes, they say, 13 trillion, none of that money was spent on us. They're nickel and diming, pennying us, while they're spending billions, what, 460 billion a year on almost 200 bases worldwide, world domination, building an empire. Who controls these Skull and Bones and York Rite, Scottish Rite, and all these other institutions at the top of the pyramid? Is that the Illuminati? Is there a new world planned in a new age? I think if anybody just looks around them, and it can see that it's obvious that that's the case. So this New World Order is not going to be for the benefit of the people. Contrary, the people will become slaves. This experiment in the USA with freedom, for them, it didn't work out. So with biodiversity and fencing off most of the land in the world, in the country, no humans allowed, and the people will be forced into cities. Do people really think they'll stop there? William Whitney married Flora Payne, daughter of Standard Oil, Treasurer Oliver Payne. The Paynes are not in the order, but adding the Payne piece to the Standard Oil fortune made Whitney's fortune the much larger. Their two sons, Harry Payne and Payne Whitney, went to Yale and became members of the order. After Yale, Harry Payne promptly married Gertrude Vanderbilt in 1896. This financial power was channeled into Guarantee Trust, the J.P. Morgan and Guggenheim outfits. It gets more complicated. For example, the son of Harry Payne, Whitney, Cornelius Vanderbilt Whitney, married Marie Norton. After their divorce, Marie Norton Whitney married Averell Harriman, his first wife, who is today at 91 a key member. It is these tightly woven family and financial interlocks that make up the core of the order. And you know, if they crash the stock market again, these peoples will have already sold off their stock before the citizens, we the people, find out. The Harriman family, in the first few days of June 1983, a prominent American, a private citizen, flew to Moscow for a confidential chat with Yuri Andropov. A State Department interpreter went along. So these people are so privileged, so powerful, that they go to other countries and talk to the Russian president and represent the United States of America, and are not even in office. This American was not the president, nor the vice president, nor the secretary of state, nor any member of the Reagan administration. It was a private individual, W. Averell Harriman. So I think the Harrimans are the ones that got the Bushes their wealth along with Saudi Arabia. But let's see what's in this book. The elder Harriman, a prominent and not too scrupulous railroad magnate, sent both his sons to Yale. William Averell Harriman and Edward Rowland Noel Harriman joined the order Skull and Bones, a good example of how old line families in the order absorbed new wealth families. Although as history has unfolded, it may be that Harriman and his fellow investment bankers have dominated the direction of the order in the past few decades. So they have a Browns Brothers and Harriman's Company, and Prescott Bush is fourth down on the list as a member. Prescott Bush. Now they want Jeb Bush to be president. What do you want to bet they can pull it off? I can see it's going to take 2 videos just to get to the first 50 pages. So I'm going to take this video to the 25th page, which is the end of the memorandum number 4. And this is memorandum number 5. So I'll start that on my next video. So I got 2 pages to go here to finish memorandum number 4 in Antony Sutton's book, America's Secret Establishment, An Introduction to the Order of Skull and Bones. Antony Sutton, a seriously well-respected author. In the 1930s, W.A. Harriman and Company merged with Brown Brothers. This was an older financial house whose partners were also members of the order. Harriman, with assets of about $1.5 billion, had taken in so many of the Brotherhood that out of 26 individual partners, no fewer than 9 were members of the order. We don't know of any greater concentration of members. And to make it more interesting, Prescott Bush, father of Vice President George Bush, both in the order, was a partner in Brown Brothers Harriman for over 40 years. Finally, because Brown Brothers Harriman is a private banking firm, it has relatively no government supervision and does not publish annual reports. So Prescott Sheldon Bush was initiated in 1917. An interesting year, the beginning of the Russian Revolution. All those people killing the Tsar and his family, and then proceeding to kill millions, maybe 100 million. Christians and other good people. A lot of them up front were shot, executed, and then of course millions were killed by starvation. Over 10 years or more. You don't think they have a plan? Think again. The editor of the Iconoclast, that newspaper that wrote about the order, because the college newspaper was forbidden to do so, he writes this: "And on their breast they wore a sign that tells their race and name. It is the ghastly badge of death, and from his kingdom came the son of Satan, son of sin, the enemy of man." Another writer in the 1870s called the Order of the Brotherhood of Death. Here's another thing. I get they wrote these little poems or writings. Crow-wise, the frightful brotherhood of death. Black-hatted and black-hooded huddle they, with black carvets a-dangling from each neck. So take they their grim station at the door. Torches lit, skull and crossbones, banners spread. Moving on here. Ron Rosenbaum again writing in the Esquire. From evidence to be presented later, this author would term the order as an international mafia. Unregulated and all but unknown, but yet they wind up in places of presidencies of the United States of America. I remember over in Britain they have another order there, and in other countries they have orders. All over the world they have these brotherhoods. You hear the word pop up all the time. All right, from evidence to be presented later, this author would term the order an international mafia. I said that. The British connections. Some well-read readers may raise a question. How does the order and the families relate to Cecil Rhodes' secret society, Milner's Round Table, the Illuminati, and the Jewish secret society equivalents? How do these fit into the picture? The links between the order and Britain go through Lizard Freres and the private merchant bankers. Notably, the British establishment was also founded at a university, Oxford University, and especially the All Souls College at Oxford. The British element is called the group. So we call them the order here, the Skull and Bones. Over there they call them the group. The group links to the Jewish equivalent through the Rothschilds in Britain. Lord Rothschild was an original member of Rhodes' inner circle. The order in the U.S. links to the Guggenheim, Schiff, and Warburg family. Remember, the Illuminati, Rothschilds, Rockefellers are all supposed to be Jewish folks, Zionist Jewish folks, trying to I guess, put Israel in a position to rule the world from Jerusalem and Tel Aviv. Most of the the largest corporations worldwide, and apparently a lot of positions in power and government are Jewish folks. As Tex Mars said, that I didn't believe, so I went and did it and checked out the corporations, and to my amazement, Tex Mars was right, and I've shown that in previous videos. There were no Jews at all in the order until very recently. In fact, the order, as Rosenberg suggests, some definite and anti-Semite tendencies, token Jews and token blacks, have been admitted in recent years. So they would have you believe, but if you look at a Freemasonic manual and all the other books, and if you took out the Judaism out of those materials, King Solomon's Temple and everything else, there would be nothing left. It's all based on that. The Middle East and the ancients, and the mystery school of Babylon religion, the pagans, Satanism, Luciferianism. There is an Illuminati connection. Some details are in the Esquire article. More details will be in future volumes. All these groups have cooperated and competitive features. That's what I said. All these groups all over the world, many different names, they have cooperative and competitive features. But to argue that all the world's ills can be ascribed to any one of these groups is false, of course. The core of the order is like the core of the group in England. Comprises about 20 families. In the U.S. case, there are mostly descendants from the original settlers in Massachusetts. New wealth did not enter the order until the mid-19th century. And the rest of my highlighted portion, and I'll finish this video. The order controls the substantial wealth of the Andrew Carnegie, but no Carnegie has ever been a member of the order. The order used the Ford wealth so flagrantly against the wishes of the Ford family that 2 Fords resigned from the board of the Ford Foundation. The Astor name is prominent in the group in England, but not in the order in the U.S. So there you have it. A little more information. A little more proof that there is something planned behind the scenes. A new world order, a new age. And the Brotherhood of Death is their logo. Their badge of distinction. And they apparently operate outside the law, and they can put themselves in positions of government, Secretary of War, Secretary of State, control politicians, become presidents to a unreasonable percentage compared to other graduates from other colleges. So you can get 800,000 other graduates with PhDs don't occupy as many positions as these 600 or 700 living skull and bone members in high positions. Why is that? Thank you for watching my video. Rick Miracle reporting.